Hello, good morning, everyone. Just checking everything is good to go. We have audio and video. All right. Cool. How's everyone going? Thank you for tuning in. It's been a while. Almost a month. Almost a month without streaming here in ZBrush Live. Had a pretty busy month last month. But yeah, all good. We're back to these regular catch ups. So we just finish up the setup here. I have a pretty cool workflow to show you today, hopefully. And we're probably gonna end up doing something kind of like, not, I wouldn't say like super polished, but finished enough for a concept today. All right, so got the chat next to me. So if you have any questions or anything that you wanna know about the process that I'm sharing, feel free to put in the chat. I have it right next to me in like big letters, so I can just easily have a look and hopefully answer any questions you might have. Alrighty. All right, cool. So so today we're gonna do some kind of like sci-fi suit helmet type of thing, like a full character, and I'm gonna show you a relatively simple but really powerful way of creating that sort of thing. In fact, if you're part of my email list or the newsletter, you can, well, I sent it today early this morning. It's kind of like the same thing, it's the same workflow, but I'm just gonna go a little bit more in depth today, show you some additional tips, additional tricks that you can use. But just so you know, I'm just gonna show you. I have it here in Keyshot. All right. So let's turn this off. Here we go. So this is a character that I built for that sort of tip in ZBrush. Well, I built it in ZBrush, sculpted in ZBrush, and this is Keyshot just for the final render. We're gonna focus more on, I guess we can we can do both. I'm just gonna start with a helmet type of thing, just to show you again some other ideas, some other things that you can do. With the suit though, that's kind of like the tip that I sent in the email. So I'm just gonna cover that as well, but it's not gonna be as in depth. I mean, it's pretty simple actually. You can get a lot of complexity with that tip that I'm gonna share. Couple of cool things though that like new to my workflow. I've been playing around with this loop deck thing. Yeah, which is kind of like a stream deck type of thing. You have like, you can customize buttons and it allows you to change things. But what I'm doing with this is using the space mouse, this 3D space mouse. So it's just a lot easier to kind of like zoom in, and I wouldn't say it's like a lot easier, it's just a lot more fun. And yeah, things like the twist and the tilt, it's a lot easier. So just in case you're wondering what I'm doing, because I can have that mouse with the left hand, and then I can just do things with my stylus or with the right hand side. But yeah, so this is kind of like what we're gonna be doing, something like this. We're gonna add more complexity to the helmet, and yeah, hopefully the tools that I give you and the workflow is gonna be interesting. So let's pause this so that it doesn't annoy us. Alrighty. Cool. Let me know if Facebook and Twitch is also good to go. I can see some of you guys in the YouTube channel. Just want to make sure that the other sources are good to go as well. And also, I'm gonna share with you where you can subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the newsletter, in case you want to get this type of like tips and tricks on the mail. Jared, Kuchevsky, the man himself. Thanks for tuning in, mate. Alrighty. So let's start. let's change these. Oh, by the way, this is the kind of like the suit. I changed some of the colors as well. But this is the cool thing. Like I'm gonna show you how to get to this point, this level of detail, even if it's not that, you know, polished in a way. Just for a quick concept, you can just get this working, send it to Keyshot, do a paint over, or even because this is a very simple, relaxed A pose, you can rig this quickly with like automated tools like Mixamo. This what's one called Rigify thing for Blender. You can set something really quickly, add a pose or even like an animation, like a work cycle, things like that, and then just have a proof of concept that works. And you can just tell someone else like, look at this sci-fi character that I did as a proof of concept. And if it is approved, let's say if you're working for a studio, then you can just go ahead and polish and go over everything a little bit more carefully. Yeah, about the space mouse. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It works with ZBrush as well, so it's pretty awesome. I think it's in all honesty, if you set it up, if you spend the time setting it up with all the tools, and like I have like this is my working hand. In my other hand, I have like set up some tools, like I can press, I think it's number 2. It's like more of a muscle memory now. Yeah, number 2 is set to solo, so I can just select that or frame the model. I can hold the Alt key, whatever, all of that within the space mouse, and I can press settings and bring this thing here. Well, this is actually the keyboard from 3D Connection as well. So I have the keyboard and then the number pad, or the numpad pro, which is, it's just a keyboard, but you can just separate this bit, and you can actually put it on top of the tablet, which is pretty cool. But yeah, this Space Mouse Pro, you can change the speed, things, any setting you want in ZBrush. So it's very easy to customize. And it's just a matter of building that muscle memory, because sometimes I'm going like, okay, I'm gonna go into solo mode, and I just feel like, okay, I'm just gonna press S, and it's gonna be a lot easier to do that. So if you just force yourself, that's what I found, at least for me. If you force yourself to just try to use that mouse for like a week and setting all the shortcuts that you want or that you use, it's actually really, really helpful. But yeah, it's the same thing as what I'm doing. I also have this thing, obviously, probably the EK Express Key Remote. Yeah, the EK remote from the Wacom tablet, and I'm using a 24. I always forget. A Wacom Cintiq 24-inch Touch. It's a long name. So yeah, that allows me to sort of like bring in my custom palettes from that button, from another button. So it's pretty handy. So it's kind of like the same thing. It's just about what you work better with. In this specific setup, I work a lot easier with this with the remote than the space mouse. When I'm not drawing directly on the screen, I found that the space mouse is more useful, like sort of like for CAD software and that sort of thing. Chris, hey, how's it going? Good to have another an extra miler here. So let's go ahead and jump straight into it, because I've been just talking rubbish for too long. So I'm gonna start with the helmet. But before I start with the helmet, I need to have some kind of reference of a humanoid character. So you can use something like Nick Zuccarello's human, for instance, and I think it comes as a project as well now, or this male. This comes with ZBrush, so you can load something like that. I'm just gonna use something different. I have this toon base just because I want something a bit more stylized, and this is kind of like what I use for the tip as well. So it's a pretty simple one. This is the topology from the Character Creator 3. They have a new topology for Character Creator 4. This one works really well as a tool or as a geometry to deform the rig that they have, but it's not the greatest topology. I mean, it has some nice loops and everything, but it's not the greatest one because I'm not gonna be deforming it with sliders. So what I'll do is I'm just gonna click on half on the the ZBrush, which is on the geometry ZBrush, this one, set to half and adapt. And I'm just gonna click on remesh that. And this is a cleaner topology for what I want to do. I'm not gonna see the face anyway, so I can just make sure I have symmetry enabled, and I'm just gonna flatten these ears. And yeah, I just want to have a little bit of a reference of the size of the head and the position of the head and all of that for the helmet. But the ZBrush just build like a much more useful topology that I can easily subdivide. And in fact, if you don't like this one, you can just click on I guess adapt will have to be on just because of the fingers and things like that. When you have like smaller portions of, not portions, smaller details that you need to describe with like smaller polygons, that's what you need the adapt for. So in other words, the adapt on will adapt to have like these smaller polygons in these areas that the model needs smaller details or smaller polygons to describe details, and other areas that are a bit larger. So up to you, but I can just click on same, and that means ZBrush is going to try to maintain this same active point, so around 10,000. Click on ZBrush, and maybe it has a better flow around here, and because I flattened the ears, it sort of like help with that. So yeah, you can just keep doing that until you find something that you like. But I think this one actually works a lot better, especially in this area. It has like a cleaner loop, whereas before it was kind of like weird. I suppose it's the same thing. You can just smooth it out. Anyway, that's not the point. This is going to be just purely a reference. The feet a little bit screwed up, but we can just do something like this. I'm smoothing with the alternative algorithm, which is the new version of ZBrush has that as a separate brush. So this one right here, the smooth alt. So if you click on that and you smooth, ZBrush is going to maintain the volume. So in other words, if I just use the normal smooth, so pressing shift and do this, you'll see it's smoothing everything, but it's kind of like reducing the volume. If I use this brush, the smooth alt or alternative, which you can access as well from the shift key without needing to load it. Basically what it's going to do is smooth, and it's going to maintain the volume a lot better. So the way that I access that tool is by clicking shift, starting the smoothing process, so basically this, and then I will let go of the shift key and it will just access it. So I just do that a lot faster. So shift, click, let go of shift, and then the smoothing process would be just this kind of like maintaining the volume. Anyway, so that is just to say that this doesn't really matter. In fact, now that we have like cleaner feet, kind of like for a boot, we can do the same, just remesh, and then we just take into account that there's no fingers now in here. That's all good. We can also maybe adjust this a bit more. We're gonna keep it stylized. That's kind of like what I tend to do anyway. Alrighty. Cool. So let's say this is our base. We can totally, subdivide this a few times and then get into the suit. Don't worry about the fingers. We won't probably see them anyway. I just want to create like some kind of glove or something. Yeah. Other than that, we are good to go. So I'm gonna append a sphere. There we go. And this is gonna be the basis of our helmet. So I'm just gonna use the gizmo to position that, scale it. We can turn on transparency as well. I don't know if you can see that. But that's gonna give us the starting point of the helmet. And I have some references on the screen. I mean, nothing specific, just these references. I wouldn't call them references. Let me just show you what that is. So I just collected a bunch of things that look sci-fi. Like literally, I did one search in Pinterest and just dump a bunch of stuff in here, but nothing specific. So I wouldn't call these necessarily references or like inspiration. They're kind of like a mood board, just to get into the mood of like this is a sci-fi thing. So just looking at it is like, oh yeah, little LEDs of light or things like that. That's kind of like to get into the mood. So that's why I'm using this as a reference. All right, so let's have a look. Can you recommend the best drawing tablet at the cheapest price? I don't have a lot of experience with other tablets, and every time that I get that question, I would say I'm not the right person to ask because I'm very biased by Wacom. Like I've been with Wacom since I can remember. I have like all my life I've had Wacom. I've tested a few like the X Pen is pretty good, and there's a new one actually. I think it's a German brand. Can't remember the name. Sorry. Which is pretty good, pretty decent, and it's similar. But yeah, I'm very biased, so I would say the best things that I've used, the best tool that I've used is Wacom, and I know it's expensive, but you know, if you're a professional, I think that's kind of like the best investment you can have or you can make, just to speed up your workflow. But there are some fantastic tablets out there. It's just that my opinion is biased. That's is what it is, to be honest. Cool. All right. Yeah, so this, if you're referring to the smooth brush, I think the smooth brush is been, or the alternative smooth brush has been in ZBrush for ages. It's just that the new version of ZBrush allows you to select it as an actual brush. Before it was just that trick that I show you. So holding shift, smoothing, and then let go of the shift. All right, so with this sphere, what I'll do is I'm gonna duplicate it just to have it there as a reference, and I'm gonna take this one and I'm gonna use maybe the knife cut and enable symmetry. Just gonna cut some pieces like that, just to give it a bit of shape. Try to follow the, oh, by the way, let me undo that. If you wanna draw that curve, right, the knife curve, hold Control and Shift to draw it, and then anything that is on that shaded side of the line that I'm drawing is gonna be clipped, right? So that's clipped. If, again, let's do it, hold Control and Shift, click and drag. If you press the Alt key while you create that this line, so I'm gonna press it once here, the Alt key, that creates a point in the curve, and it's like a Bezier curve. So you can do that, and then I'm gonna press it Alt again, and that way I just got that little piece, which is fine. And then I'll do the same thing from this angle, Alt, Alt, and Alt. Right? This is not necessarily how it's going to look. I'm just trying to give it a bit of shape. But now that we have that weird shape, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it into a Dynamesh object, maybe with a bit more resolution. And I'm just gonna use the polish. So this tool, the polish, obviously it's in the deformation palette. So I'm just using this polish to polish this, and then use the smooth brush to clean it. So you see, all those kind of like planes that I was defining are not necessarily the planes of the helmet. It's just to give it some initial shape. You could do the same thing with the move brush. So just doing this if you want. We'll get to the rest later. So I'm gonna start giving it a bit of a, more of a sci-fi look. And I'm also using the AccuCurve in the Move brush, which is under the brush palette, curve, AccuCurve, and that just allows you to have a more pointy, like when you pull things, you'll see it's a lot more pointy, right? Sorry, we can download you can download my UI. If you go to my YouTube channel, there is a tutorial on how to customize your UI, and let me just find it. So videos, hang on. So it's in here somewhere. I have a review of the Space Mouse Pro as well, if you want to check it out, for those who are interested in that mouse that I just mentioned. I went blank now. So, oh, here, custom ZBrush UI. So I'll just put this in here. Right. So this is a tutorial on how to customize the UI. And if you go to the description here, you can download the UI from here, from this link. And it comes with two files, one for left-handed people and one for right-handed. So that means that everything that I have here on my right-hand side, if you're left-handed, it would be on the other side. And that's just so that, I mean, the purpose of this UI is so that you don't cover what you're doing while you're working, in a way. So you have to, I don't have to cover what I'm doing to just reach to a specific UI. I have it everything in the right side. Yeah, so hopefully that helps. All right, so let's define this a little bit more, and I'll show you some of the cool tips that I have for you today. Okay, so this is all you have to do. Just have something like a general volume, general shape of whatever you want to make. This is not applicable just for sci-fi or helmet stuff. You can just have something like this and then just have fun kind of like slicing through and creating panels and all of that sort of thing. But it's important to have at least some kind of basic shape ready. So just so that you can see the before and after and all of that, I'm just going to create the usual folder. New folder, my OR. And if you're new to the streams, you're probably wondering what that is. This is just an original files. So I usually do this every time that I'm working on something here. I just create a folder and I put everything that I kind of like the stages of what I'm doing. So now I take this, duplicate that and put it here. So I end up with lots of different subtools, but these ones here in this folder are not that useful. It's just that if I need to go back to certain stages of the process, I can just go back there instead of using the undo history. And this is also helpful when you save. This is just another tip. It sometimes is, you know, cheaper, as in easier for the system and the file size to have multiple subtools with different stages than having than save it and file with all the undo history. So if you go to file and click on undo history, when you save, the undo history is not going to be saved. So it's going to be a smaller file. But I have my undos in a way in here. Let's see. I wonder if AI will take over Adi's job soon. I have actually in the 3D snippets, I don't know if you know what that is, but 3D snippets, let me show you all this stuff. I have something in here where I talk about it. So the answer is I don't think so. They might speed up some of the work from some artists as well. I think for me it has. So if this 3D snippets is kind of like my monthly set of projects. So I just do a project every month and share the process and that sort of thing. So you can subscribe to this. So there's my thoughts on the AI tools, and I just walk you through kind of like what I think it's the power of AI. So all of these images have been generated purely with AI using the Midjourney. And Midjourney is a tool that is absolutely fantastic. It's very scary as well, but it's really good. And I've been part of the beta team. Well, not the team, but like the beta program for a while. And I've kind of like saw the progression and like the evolution of the tool. So it's really cool. But yeah, all of these ones is 100%. Like I didn't put any image reference or anything at all. It's just like I just typed a I think I put it here, just the prompt. Yeah, I typed a prompt and that's what you get. Even something like this, right? These were for like, you know, sci-fi corridors or sci-fi alley, like that sort of thing. So it's pretty amazing. But you know, going back to what we're doing here in ZBrush, if you were to do something like this, you can just definitely go ahead and click on an AI tool and say, give me some AI, some helmet references, some sci-fi characters, that sort of thing, which it might give you something really, really cool. Is up to the artist to decide what's good and what's not. And I don't think AI is going to ever replace that, because AI, unless it becomes like sentient and it's like the Terminator scenario, unless that happens, the AI would have some, like, us as artists would have something that the AI doesn't have, which is context, and we can make we can make whatever we want based on context. So anyway, that's for maybe for another stream. Let's continue with this, but I don't think it will definitely change some things in the industry. I think that eventually, by the way, I'm just going, while I'm talking about it, I'm just going to show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold Control and W to assign a single polygroup. I'm going to select the slice curve, which does this, basically slice through it, and then I'm just going to start cutting things like this, like paneling, right? And I'm going to focus on one side, because this brush doesn't use or can be used with symmetry. I can't remember, actually. Let me see. Yeah, this one doesn't work with symmetry. So I'll just concentrate on one side of the helmet, and then yeah, we'll continue from there. So what I think that could happen, and this is just based on absolutely nothing other than just some random thoughts that I had, is eventually there's gonna be a shift in the industry if people start relying too much on the AI tools. Not necessarily a bad one. I just think that there will be some kind of like disclaimers from now on, whether it is AI assisted or not. Even like studios maybe will turn into that, as in this is a studio that do not uses AI, so that people that hire that studio know that whatever is done through them is not going to have any copyright claims or any copyright issues, because that's probably one of the main issues that I see with AI. The copyrights, because it's using a pool of data that is publicly available on the internet. So anyway, I think ultimately that's what it could happen. Like, the studios would have like a disclaimer, or there would be some studios that actually rely 100% on AI, and they are like AI studios in a way. But I don't think, like, I'm not worried about losing my job, and that's pretty much my job. Like, my job is to come up with concepts, but I'm not worried, because I know I have a saying on what I rely on my taste, on my experience, on my eye for design, that sort of thing, and that's really hard to replace in a it's going to be hard to replace for an AI automated tool. However, I love it, so I use it a lot, and I've been using it for to create reference. So the way that I put it in that article that I just shared with you guys, it's fairly simple. Like, before I used to just spend hours collecting images and collecting references and things that I could use for my projects. So for these, I would just go through the process of doing this, right? And you'll see there are like different styles. This is more stylized, this is more realistic, very different things. I would collect a whole bunch of these ones. This is just a very quick one. And then decide, like, okay, these three are good for a specific part, and that sort of thing. Nowadays, with the AI tools, what I think is useful is to build your own references. So I've been using it like that. Instead of researching, I just go like, oh, I want this idea, and I have 100, well, whatever you have time to produce, because it takes time. Let's say 50 different images, but you're literally creating your own reference or mood board, and you might find ideas from different images, but it's not the final output. So I wouldn't rely on AI to just give me, if a director comes to me and say, hey, we need a sci-fi character, I wouldn't just go sci-fi character and then give me 5 options, choose one that I think is really cool, and send it, because it doesn't have any necessarily any design process. Basically, I mean, it's just generated from other cool designs that might have pop in the UI. So anyway, I don't know if that makes sense, but just that's my 2 cents on the issue, or yeah, not issue, but you know what I mean. All right, I think you'll see that going back to this character or this concept, the left hand side is a little bit busier than the right hand side, and you might think, oh, this is just really, this is nothing, but you'll see in a second what I mean. So what I'll do is I'm gonna mirror. Hang on, actually, let's do a cut here. There we go. Let's mirror, and then mirror and weld. So these tools for you guys, in case you don't know, they would be, the mirror is on the deformation palette, so you can mirror things from one side to the other, and then in the geometry palette, you have the modified topology. You can click on mirror and weld, and it's just basically, now we have 2 sides that are exactly the same thing. Okay. Do you have portfolio reviews? I do. Not necessarily portfolios. I do reviews for work in progress in my class, in my course, The Extra Mile. So I just don't really have much time to do that aside from that. But if you're part of my Discord channel, I'm planning to do that sort of thing a little bit more. So not Discord channel, Discord server. So you can join the server, and there's a bunch of really cool stuff in there, and all the ads there are fantastic, like sharing stuff. Alrighty. Okay, so basically now what we have is the ability to say, I like this area or I don't like it, and then just split it. So what I mean by that is I'm gonna switch to the select rectangular tool, hold Control and Shift, and I'm gonna isolate the pieces that I want to keep as a whole. So for instance, this dark purple, the light purple, the pink one, this light green, this dark green, this kind of like brownish, those are part of one piece that I want to create. So I'm just gonna select, hold Control and Shift. I'm also gonna turn on double, which for you guys would be on the display properties. This double here, that's what I have in my UI, so that you can see inside. So if I turn double, you won't see the back side of the, it's kind of like back face calling. Control Shift, click and drag to invert, and then I select the other pieces that I want, invert, and I have now this piece that I can go ahead and click on group visible, or Control W. Right, so that is the idea of the next step. So I'm gonna take this, for instance, to this might be the visor, so might divide it in a, let me just think. Yeah, I think this would be one, so group visible, and this will be another one, group visible. And yeah, it's just a matter now of playing around with these things to define them. This one would be one single piece. Except this one. All right, group visible. So yeah, just gonna do this maybe for the back as well. Maybe have a bit more details. This area. Group visible. And here at the top, it's gonna be one. Group visible. We get in there. I'm just gonna regroup this with a different color so you can see. Maybe this one actually should be one piece. Here at the back. This would be a whole piece. So I wouldn't focus on details at this stage. It's more about, just setting up the groundwork, basically. So this would be another group piece, and this whole thing, maybe this is where the character puts the the head through. Group visible. Alrighty. So that's what we have now. Something pretty simple. So there's a few ways of going about the next step is to split everything into separate pieces and add thickness and that sort of thing. I want to keep it very simple. So I'll show you what I like to do with this. First, I like to scale everything down a bit. So we could use the gizmo or use the inflate. So for this specific object that is very simple, the process is relatively the same thing. So if I use the deflate, in other words, take the inflate and push it inwards a bit, it's not going to be a big deal. However, if you have something that is like a calving or something that like an angle that goes in and you use the inflate, you'll start getting some kind of like intersection. So in this case, if you have that sort of thing, you can go to the gizmo and then just scale it down a bit. Now the scaling down is purely so that it's closer to the head, to the actual geometry of the head, because the next step is going to inflate things a bit. So if you want to maintain that original blockout that you did, you can actually do what's the name? Duplicate as a reference and then keep it there. But yeah. Anyway, the next thing that I would do is use the edge loops. And these edge loops, within the edge loops, you have panel loops, and the panel loops is what I want to do with this. So if I just click without altering anything, just the default settings, click on panel loops, you'll see that immediately we have, based on the polygroups that we establish, we have these nice cuts for a cool sci-fi model, right? And I can just go ahead and smooth all of that just to show you they are all separate pieces, right? Which is pretty cool. And then you can go ahead and move them around. So that's what I want to do. However, I'm going to undo that just a bit. I'm going to increase the thickness to 0.3, and we can play around with this. So panel loops, that's too much. Undo. Panel loops, bit too much. I think it's around 0.015. Yeah, that's not too bad. And also, you see, this is pretty sharp in terms of the edges, and I don't want that. I want something that still looks sci-fi, but it's not as hard surface. It's more organic. So instead of having that sharp edge, what you can do is, let's undo that. Here in the beveling, we can click on that, and that's a bevel profile. So this edge that you see here, that's literally, or this profile is literally the shape that you see when you click on panel loops. So if let me isolate one of these guys. Maybe from this angle, so a little bit easier to see. Sorry, I'm just trying to, so now you can see that profile that you have here, this curve, that's exactly what is happening in here, right? So you can change this in any way you want, right? So let's undo all of that. Hang on, there we go. And I'm gonna just click on this point, drag it out, this point, drag it out, and then click in the center and do something like this. And then also in this, if I hover over any point, you'll see that yellow outline. You can click on that and you can scale that. So just scaling that a little bit. So I think that works. Let's try that out. Panel loops, and still a little bit sharp. And that is not to do with this. It is to do with the polishing factor. So we can turn that off. And now we have, this is very jagged edge. So let's just leave the polish. The polish is just going to take the difference between the polygroups and it's going to maintain that. In terms of the beveling, let's remove that a little bit altogether so you can see what it does. There's no bevel at all, so it's not using any of this beveling curve, but it is still there, so I can just smooth that out and you see it's pretty clean. So that is kind of like what I want. So no bevel, and you'll see why in a second. Maybe let's try with, let's undo. Let's try with 8. Let's keep it at 0. I'm gonna click on panel loops now, and that should have created everything that I needed. Let's go into solo mode, smooth everything out. So yeah, this is pretty much what I need. Now the important thing now to remember when you use panel loops, or at least with those settings, is that every single polygroup that was that you had before is going to be different from the polygroup that you will have in the border that is generated and the actual inside of the model, right? So if I hold Control and Shift and start hiding all these pieces, yep, you'll see that the green polygroup or yellow polygroup, that's one for the entire inside of the model, and the borders are different. You see this kind of like weird flickering, and that is just because I didn't use any beveling. Those are actually coplanar, so there's just like hard to see them, but if you isolate one, it should be fine. So what's important about this is that you can determine the thickness of these pieces. So let me just, you know what, I'm gonna keep it a lot simpler than that, and I'm just gonna isolate, hold Control and Shift and isolate those pieces. You don't have to do this. I'm just gonna try to keep things simple. So I can isolate this one, invert, and isolate that again. So I just hide all the sides just to show you. So this is a single polygroup that I can smooth, and you see it is still caught in pieces because they're not, you know, they come from the original polygroups. So what I can do is assign different polygroups by just going to auto group, and it will give me those. Remember, this is just the inside of the mesh. You can do that. I'm gonna undo that, and instead what I'll do is something a lot simpler. That is, you know, you can do it this way, or the simpler approach would be to just isolate the pieces like so, right? Invert it, and by the way, we can duplicate this, keep it in the originals. So invert it, so now it's what you cannot see, which is inside, is hidden at the moment, and I can click on delete hidden, which is on the geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. So all of that rant about polygroups and stuff is just to say that you define the polygroups first, then you can split them individually by groups, or you can just use panel loops to do the same thing. And now you can hold Control and Shift to access this one, but you'll see there's nothing inside, even though I have double, right? And that is what I wanted, to simplify this. And you'll see, well, or you might ask, what's the difference between what we have right now and what we just had a few minutes ago? The main difference really is that when I press the Shift key, I can smooth this like so, because they're separate, right? They're not the same mesh. And what that allows me to do is to use the dynamics of division, right? So if I go ahead, where are we? Dynamic is here. Dynamics of division on the geometry palette. If I enable that, obviously you get the gaps, which is not a problem at this stage, and that's why I didn't bother with the beveling in the panel loops. So you won't see any of that later. So you have that. You can also polish by groups, and that should polish, you know, the difference between groups. I'm not gonna do that just yet. But what's cool about the dynamics of division is that it allows you to play with the thickness, so you can determine what's the thickness of those panels of your helmet just by doing this. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm gonna hide half. Actually, let's just leave it as it is, and it's gonna be hard to see. Yeah, it doesn't matter. But basically, you can tweak the thickness to go in or to go out. So if you want it to go in, you can change the offset to -100. So now the geometry is going in. You won't see it. That's why I said it's a little bit hard to see. But if I apply this and hide half of it, you see the thickness is going in or inwards. That's what I wanted. So I think that's fine. Or you can make it go outwards. Now, if you make it go inwards, just be aware that if you have double enable, you probably won't see it, but in this case, it's fine, but you won't see, if you have double enable, you won't see the normals of the polygon, so you might end up with something weird. So just be aware that, check with the double. This one is fine. So to simplify all the steps and everything that I've been talking about, set up the volume of your mesh, whatever the helmet, then create your polygroups in any way you want. You can use the selection tools or what I did, which is the slice curve. Set up the panels in, choosing the panels that you want to keep, and then use the panel loops or any other tool to split them, and then use the dynamic width thickness to create that thickness. And now I apply those, meaning that this is now applied, so it's like a lot more resolution, but everything is still pretty smooth. Now, to get rid of those horrible edges, that is just for the from the splitting or slicing of the mesh. What I'll do is the next step, which is pretty cool, is going to be enable Dynamesh, but I'm gonna click on groups. So for you guys, Dynamesh. So let's leave Dynamesh on. I'm gonna click on groups, right? And hold Control, click and drag to redynamesh. And that is all right. Before I do that, actually, I just remember that I also have some different polygroups in the inside. So before doing that, otherwise you'll get lots of issues. I'm gonna auto group, and that basically isolates each piece individually, right? So I can now select and see the pieces as they are. I'm just gonna run a quick polish of everything just to make sure I don't have weird artifacts or polygons. Yeah, so that's good. And again, just to make sure that I have the right polygroups on both sides, you can just go ahead and click on mirror and weld, and then redynamesh with group selected. So now each one of these pieces is a Dynamesh piece, right? Which is really cool, meaning that you can still smooth them out individually. And let's say if you do something like, like this, whatever, right? And you're using, oops, sorry. And you're using Dynamesh to continue the sketching process, you can redynamesh, and if you keep the groups, all of these ones are still going to be separate. That is the real power of this workflow, right? So I'm just gonna do all that, going to symmetry, and now I'm gonna turn this off, so I'm not too worried about the polygroups anymore. I already know they're there, and I have Dynamesh and polygroup, right? So now I can start playing around with this thing a little bit more. So I'm gonna use something like the move topological with AccuCurve, and that would respect topology, or in other words, if I click and drag, you see it doesn't pull the entire mesh, just the polygroup. And that's how you can start doing things like this, just to kind of like expand on the idea of the panels. So let's play around with this concept a bit. I mean, and this is just like the first pass. You can further subdivide each one of these pieces, and just to give you an idea, you could isolate this piece, right? Then go to the slice curve. Hang on. Like this. Slice that. Then mirror and weld. And then redynamesh those with the groups. So it's going to redynamesh everything, but because you split this into groups, then you have more panels, which is awesome. Let's do a polished one. There we go. I like to keep things relatively clean. So maybe this is a piece of the helmet that can go on top. I don't know. I'm gonna make things up quite a bit in here. But yeah, hopefully you get the idea of the workflow, and it's a pretty cool one. I think. Maybe we can have some kind of layering happening here. Yeah, let's start to look a little bit interesting. And keep in mind that this is just the blocking stage of, let's say, the panels or the main shapes of the helmet. We can definitely go for more details after. You can also hold Control and Shift to isolate pieces and work separately. I'm just gonna add a bit of volume towards the head. Like so. And another cool thing that you can do is, for instance, if I want to move, let's say, this piece away like that, but I don't want to compromise this area, as in creating a hole. You can enable the back face masking, and that will make things a lot sharper. So let me show you what it's doing actually. Do that. Hold Control and Shift to isolate it. So if I have back face masking enabled, you'll see I'm not affecting the inside. So I can do this really quick and sharp movements. So that's what I did. Just do that. And back face masking is under the brush. That's on the auto masking. This one right here, back face masking. I use it in a bunch of different ways, so that's why I have it right here in my UI or in my custom palette. All right, so we're getting somewhere interesting. Don't worry about the body. The suit and the body is another tip that I'll give you towards the end of the stream, because it's just really fast. And it's kind of like the really cool one. This one is just an extra one that you can use. Another cool thing you can do as well with this technique is, since everything is different polygroups, you can enable things like, let's say the damp standard brush, right? That allows you to do this, and I can hold the Alt key to invert the effect and then sharpen up those edges if you want. But obviously this goes throughout the entire model. If you want to restrict it to the polygroups, you can obviously do the the Control and Shift to isolate this. Hold Control, click once in the canvas to mask it. Control and Shift, click once in the canvas to invert the selection, or to bring back everything, sorry. Then Control, click once in the canvas to invert the masking, and then whatever you do is just going to be restricted to that, right? Or you can just go to the brush palette and go to the auto masking, and you can click on topological, right? Or mask by polygroups. So topological will respect the continuity of the topology. So if you have a single piece, but like, let me bring this up. So this is a tool that I use to explain things in my streams and courses. It's called the Epic Pen, in case you're wondering. So let's say if you look at the profile of something like this, and if it was a single polygroup that had that cut in, so imagine this is the side of the polygroup or the polygon, then it goes in like that. If this was the case, and it was a single polygroup that had just an insertion there, like a cut in there, if you use topological with whatever brush, ZBrush is gonna look at what you're, let's say you're pressing here and smoothing or adding details, is going to look at this difference or this angle and say, okay, I'm not gonna do anything on this next panel or next volume, because the continuity of the topology is kind of like going first here, then in here, if that makes sense, like kind of like the loop goes like that. So ZBrush will prioritize adding detail, let's say around here, than in this area. So when you use it in that context, yeah, you will be able to easily add details on one area, but not the next one if it was a single polygroup or a single mesh. Sorry. The mask by polygroups is different, and this is a global setting, so make sure that if you turn it on and off, you know, you're aware of that. I have it here in my UI. It's called, oh, maybe I removed it already. I haven't used it for a while. Yeah, well, I have it here in my macros, or I should have them in my macros. I have a bunch of random ones. Yeah, these two. It's MBP is masked by polygroups on. So if I click on that, it will turn on everything to 100. And that means that whatever I click first, that's going to be my polygroup. And then I can just go like this. And you see it's not going to affect anything else, right? And that's why I have it in a macro, because I can switch between this on and off. I should have another one that's called off, which, yeah, I'm not going to waste my time. I'm just gonna set it to 0, and that way it works through all of them. So you could definitely do that sort of thing to, you know, help you polish stuff. So for instance, in here would be useful, since I'm just want to polish this a little bit, and I'm grabbing all the pieces that I don't want. So I'm just gonna use the simple one. Okay, so I think as a starting point, this looks all right. This could be some kind of like hard surface trap or something holding up on that. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how we go. All right. So now, again, this, you know, you can spend a lot more time doing this, right? But if you go ahead and click on clay polish, for instance, it's just going to sharpen those lines a lot more. And for instance, this one that I did with the damp sander brush, and these ones right here, you'll see ZBrush tries to identify where they are and try to keep them. So that's a really cool way of getting this type of sharp lines instead of using clip brushes or anything like that. So it's pretty cool. Let me have a look. Yes, I believe this is being, yeah, this is going to be recorded, or it's been recorded, and then it's going to be available later on in the ZBrush channel. And I also add them to the ZBrush Guides live sessions. Do I ever use the mask by polygroup at 50%? Nah, no, never, to be honest. But you know, there might be very, very specific cases that is useful. I just don't use it. Yeah, that's right. That's why I have my own macros to set it up as a on and off, rather than using the slider for the polygroups, because that's the real scenario where I would use it just on and off. Hey, Comics Legend, good to have you here. When will your asset workshop will be available? So soon. Soon is the answer. We're in the process of like setting a few things up, you know, because ultimately it's going to be based on the recordings of the live sessions, which went really well. So fortunately we have the content, and we're just editing a few bits and pieces, setting everything up as an actual course, as an intensive course, and it's going to be an on-demand course. And then, yeah, you will be able to get it if you want to. So in the next few weeks, couple weeks, I would say. But yeah, definitely, if everything goes well, next time that I'm doing a live stream, I would let you know that it's either ready or that it's coming on a specific day. We just need to come up with the right date, or know the date. So for those of you who don't know, we ran a live workshop called the Asset Library Workshop, where I basically taught a bunch of different workflows to create assets. So PBR materials, alphas, brushes in ZBrush, advanced brushes, you know, lighting setups, yeah, a whole bunch of different assets. And the idea was to not only explain my process, but also um, show you a little bit of what goes behind creating assets, and kind of like the mentality or like the mindset that you can get into to produce and reproduce everything that you do. Everything that you produce as an asset, you can reuse it and repurpose it, sorry, in something else. So that was kind of like the main focus, so you can build your own library of assets that you can actually use. Because one of the main things that I found, or at least in my experience, is that I have at least a terabyte or so of resources that I've bought, of that I downloaded, or that I created myself in a way, in my hard drive. But you know, even though I have those, I don't really use them. I know they're there, and if I need it for a specific purpose, I might use them, but I don't really use them. So the workshop actually is meant to kind of like propose a different view on how you can set up your assets and really build something that you know you can use. And since I kind of like came up with that approach, or developed my own approach for that, I've been creating my own assets that I use and reuse multiple times, and I can consistently use them in my projects. So that is the idea of the of the asset library workshop. So if you're interested in creating your own assets, I will let you know once it's ready. Oh, that brings me to another thing, right? In the asset library workshop, we have a at the end of the workshop, we have kind of like a bonus section where I cover kind of like the marketing aspect of what it goes in, you know, what it goes behind the release of one of my personal brushes pack. You know, from the marketing perspective, and the, you know, creating the visuals and that sort of thing. So that's actually fun, and that brings me to my next thing that I want to show you, that the ZBrush Guides store has a brand new home. So I'll put it here in the chat. Oh, thanks, Chris. Yeah, Chris was in the actual live workshop doing some amazing. Maybe you can share with everyone your or I would. Let me just show you what Chris is doing. Don't worry, I won't share any hidden thing. I'm just going to show the patina ones that you've created. And hang on. All right, so this is Chris. So he did the asset library workshop, and he's working on these really cool kind of like bronze and patina materials. This is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is basically one single material based on that workflow that I share, that you can tweak and change. So make sure that you check out his page and see the development of this stuff. And he has some other really cool, awesome stuff. He's also part of the Extra Mile, so you might see some things like this one. He's Chris's artwork for the Extra Mile, which is absolutely fantastic. So definitely go and check him out, and check out the development of his assets as well. Yeah, so that's basically it. So going back to the store, this is the brand new store. So we basically had to move the URLs. So now this is a much better account. Before I was using a different service, but this one is really, really good. And then you can just go to ZBrush Guides. Instead of .com, you go .store, and it's just, you know, kind of like a collection of just the assets that I have, or the brushes packs and all of that. Like, yeah, all of these ones. You might be familiar with some of the stuff that I have in here if you came to the to these live streams before. One of the cool things about it is that you have the ability to create account, which before we didn't have it, so it was a bit of a mess. But now you can just, you know, create an account, and whatever you buy, whatever you purchase, or, you know, we still have like the free stuff. If you go to categories, you can just go to all of these guides, like the mastering the UV master, or creating feathers in ZBrush, or the comic material. All of those are free stuff, so you can just click on them and download them, and if you have an account, it will just be in there as well. And also, Yeah, so it basically allows you to, if you haven't got these resources and you want to get them, you can, a little tip is you can just add them all to cart, even the free ones, and then just get them in one single go. You don't have to do it one by one, which was another annoying thing from the previous one. And just to wrap this quick plug of the ZBrush Guide store in there, I'll just say that you can now have two more things. The review, so you can just read the reviews and drop a review. So thanks everyone that is leaving a review. It's really helpful, especially to recover that 6 or 7 years of lost SEO that we lost when we changed the URL. So it's good to have people coming into the store. But the other thing is, if you go down to here, we now have these things. So the gift cards. So this is something that we just released recently, and it's basically a gift card. So if you like the stuff that I have in the store, you can just, you know, gift it for an artist that might be using them, and they're like different values, whatever you want to use. These are not random values. It's just that most of the brushes packs that I have are $15. So, you know, you can get one brush pack or two brushes pack, or, you know, that sort of thing. There's a lot more payment methods, and anyway, it's most of the stuff are ZBrush Guides related or ZBrush related, so that's why I'm showing you. So yeah, feel free to browse through it. This could be another thing, like if you're running your own art contest or things like that, you can use these as like reward cards as well. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Just wanted to show you that there's a brand new store, and yeah, it's looking a lot better, and hopefully it will help you as well. All right, going back to this guy, we still have plenty of time. I'm just gonna kind of like leave it there. But something else we can do is cut things in pieces to do a quick series measure as well. So I'm gonna use the slice curve again. I'm gonna select this piece, go into solo mode, and I'm gonna cut it there. And I'm also gonna cut it around there. And I'm just gonna focus on this right-hand side. I'm gonna isolate. Actually, yeah, let's leave it as it is. Let's do the same thing here. So I'm gonna click on this one. So this is just slicing the mesh once again. But the difference between this slicing and the previous one is that this is purely for a series measure purpose. So it's not gonna be to create additional panels or anything like that. These are just the difference between the polygroups that I'm gonna create is purely a guide to the series measure. Right? So for instance, I want this to be clean, so that I select this one, make sure, yeah, all of that is good. Group visible, same thing as this one. Group visible. So I only want to keep a loop, a clean loop in here, and that's what the difference of the polygroups would be. So let me just do these other ones quickly. I want a straight line there, and another one in here, and then we can isolate this one. All right. And just for the fun of it, let's do a couple more here, so that you can see what the series measure does. Oh, actually, this one is fine. Something like that. Maybe one in here. All right. So again, I'm just focusing on this area on the right-hand side. So let's mirror and well. So now we have them in both sides, and we can now use the series measure. So again, let's go to the subtool palette, duplicate that, drop that in the originals just to keep it in there. And now let's go to series measure. Here we go. And in the series measure, I'm gonna do a couple of things. I'm gonna keep groups, so that we tell ZBrush keep all the groups that we have, and that's what's gonna force ZBrush to maintain, you know, the difference between the polygroups and create a clean loop in these areas. So look at how crazy topology we have here, and that is just because of the Dynamesh, obviously. So let's clean this up, and I'm gonna turn off. Oh, actually, this should be okay. So this line in here, as well as this line all the way there, even though we have triangles and all of that because of the Dynamesh and the slicing, when we do the zero measure with keep groups, Zero is going to try to maintain that difference, and that's going to give us a clean loop, hopefully, around there. It's not, you know, super precise, but should be. And the smooth groups means that if you have, it doesn't really matter in this scenario, so I can just leave it at 0. But if you had something like, let's clean, that's not going to be obvious here. Right? If I have something like this that is very jagged because of the, you know, the Dynameshing or whatever, that's when you want to use the polish groups, so that ZBrush runs a polishing of those groups before it applies the zero measure. So I don't need it in this case. Target polygon count should be okay at 5,000. Let's try this with just this setting. So let's keep adapt, keep groups, smooth groups to 0, zero measure, and I also have symmetry enabled. Boom, that's it. So like I said, it sort of maintains this line, and all the other ones that we sort of establish are maintained, which is pretty cool. You know, some areas might need a little bit of work. So what we can do is maybe do skip groups, turn off, adapt, click on same, and then remesh, just to get a different remeshing. But I think what I'll do is I'm going to undo that. And I'm just going to help the zero measure by just increasing, oh, sorry, not this one, increasing the polygon count, the target polygon count. That's a lot easier. This one is having a little bit of issues, or a bit of trouble because of the kind of like shape, the triangular shape, which is, you know, I knew it was going to be an issue. So what I can do is we can either subdivide this even more, or add another polygroup in here, or we can just undo that and then group this. Sorry, let's try both. So I'm gonna do, oops, a cut here. All right, so mirror, mirror, and weld. So we have both. So now there's a difference in polygroup here. Let's see if that works. We still have this issue with the triangulation in here. So let's take these two, and maybe this one as well, and group visible. Let's see if that makes it better. So a lot cleaner, right? So that was, sometimes you find like issues like that when you have like triangles. In this case, it worked fine. Yeah, so let's do half, just to clean this even more. And half again. All right, I think that looks all right, but I'm just gonna keep it, you know, like this. And I'm gonna click on clay polish just to sharpen things up again. And if we wanted to, we can just start playing around with these sort of like connections, but now we have a, you know, cleaner topology that we can subdivide, or we can enable dynamic subdivision with no thickness, obviously. And another thing we can use is, since we have polygroups, or at least difference in kind of these lines of polygroups, what we can do is click on crease polygroups. And that's going to crease the difference between the polygroups, giving us a sharper line, right? That's just a difference, a change in material. All right, so I'm just going to tweak this a little bit. But we're gonna move into the suit, which is like the really cool tip today. Or not, I mean, the one that I think you're gonna play around with the most. Just covering some of the gaps. But yeah, so at this point, you know, you should have something that looks pretty decent. as a starting point or as a blockout. And then of course you can as well subdivide or apply the dynamic subdivision, so you have lots of let me just show you. Actually, I'm gonna apply dynamic subdivision, so I mean I have 1 million polygons. I can do it one more time, so have, well, 7 million polygons in a helmet. I mean, it's all right. 1.8 is fine. And then I can just take something like this cutter and start playing around with, you know, more of this sort of thing, like additional panelings that are not necessarily geometry, like different geometry. They are more of detail design. I'm using the Geiger cutter, which is part of the Geiger pack, just because, like, as you see, it's a lot stronger and faster to do these sharp things, but you can use the damn standard brush. It's essentially the same thing. And this type of like going back to that, what I briefly mentioned about the AI, this type of design choices, what I'm doing is what the AI would never be able to do. I mean, you can tell it, give me more panels or give me more panels in this area, but it will never have the, again, like the context or the ability to decide for yourself. So anyway, we can do things like this, or we can do a quick alpha. I'll show you. You can make your own quick alphas. I have a bunch of them in my alpha library, but you can, let's say, select a cylinder, make it a polymesh 3D, right? And then take the gizmo. I'm gonna mask half of it, control, click and drag. And that sort of like adds, yeah, adds a little bit to it. Also, with the C modeler, I'm gonna hide this again. with sorry, with the not the C modeler, the selection rectangular piece. I'm gonna hide this center, maybe this one as well. So now I only have those two faces, and I'm gonna do polygroup visible. And now with the C modeler, I can right click on a face and can go insert polygroup all. So the target will be to insert the polygons. The action is to insert the polygons. The target is going to be all the polygroups that have the same ID or the same polygroup. Click and drag, do that sort of thing. And because I'm creating some triangles here, I don't want to do that. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to legacy. Equidistant is the one that is producing those triangles. So now I can do legacy, do this stuff. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's not great, but I just want to be able to add dynamic and have like a nice set of bevels. Yeah, so that's one thing. And then I'm going to use the gizmo center, make sure that it's center, gear icon, taper. So there's the format, so just to taper up that a little bit, and then use the white cone to change the profile. So I'm just gonna make it very sharp, like so. We're gonna accept, and there we go. So this is one, new alpha. So to turn it into an alpha, let's select the standard brush, and I'm gonna go to brush, clone that brush so that it doesn't affect the original standard brush, and click on alpha, and let's go to not create here, from mesh. If I click on this one, I have this panel, this little window. I can set the size to 124. So these are all stuff that I cover in depth in the asset library workshop, just to create alphas. But basically, this is what you can do, like that. And that's going to be an alpha based on whatever you have on the screen. So I can click on OK. I want to select this one from the side. Do the same thing. So from mesh, that's going to give me a slightly different effect. And that's it. So let's select this one, go back to the helmet, that has subdivision. Oops, here we go. And I'm gonna right click, or actually let's go to the texture. Sorry, not texture, as stroke. Select the drag rect, click and drag, and that's adding that alpha. I'm also going to change the intensity, so it is very intense, and change the focal shift so that there's no kind of like fading from that, right? And that's it. We can use these either in positive values, so that's one way of doing it, or we can enable or disable Z-add and enable Z-sub, which if you have the standard UI, it should be at the top, or otherwise it would be on the draw in here, in the draw palette. So now I have this in Z-sub, and I can do this type of like classic. If you make this, you guarantee a sci-fi look. You know, they're kind of like typical stuff, but they're so cool. Or you can use them in a larger way, like that. Maybe we can do something here with, let's see, something like that, and then in here we can add some IMMs. Let's try the other alpha I created. It's kind of like a different way of adding a hole in there. And of course you can, redynamesh or remesh this whole thing, and that would work as well. Maybe this panel would be, or this line would be a guide for placing this one. Yep. Anyway, let's do clay polish quickly, just to make sure all of these things are nicely smoothed out, or not. I think it works. Let's leave it as it is. Just to give you an idea of how you can do that. Now, to wrap up the helmet before we go into the body, I promise the body should be pretty fast once we get to it. I'm gonna go ahead and append a cube. Select that cube and make it a Q cube. The Q cube is in here, in initialize Q cube, which is stands for quick cube. You can make it a sphere, a grid, it doesn't matter, just something. And that cube, I'm just gonna scale it down and just place it right inside the head so that you don't see it. And it's gonna be my dummy file to add IMM brushes. So let's click on the, let's select the IMM model kit that comes with ZBrush. And here we can use, things like this with symmetry to click and drag. And because we're drawing this on the cube, it's a separate mesh. And we can bring in the gizmo, push that in, right? Maybe give it a bit more. Yep, and then click on dynamic, and that's gonna add dynamic subdivision to the whole cube and anything that we add to it. So that's how you can achieve that. Maybe use this one inside this bit. If you want to scale things with symmetry, make sure that you have local symmetry so that we can scale based on the volume of the mesh, not this center line. Right, so that's not bad. Let's add something here for like communication. So kind of by the way, you can also go into solo mode and modify these things quite easily. So in this case, we can use the C modeler to tag holding Alt, all these mesh, all these, all of these faces. Right click, and we can do something like QMesh, polygroup all. It doesn't matter, but just extrude that, and that's it. So yeah, this is how this guy communicates, maybe from there. All right. I'm gonna add a couple of big stuff here, just to maybe this thing rotates from here, kind of like a hinge or something. So maybe this panel rotates like that, and then the whole helmet slides up through here, some rails or something. Yeah, so maybe this is what it is. So this thing would, so I get into these things when I'm designing, but just to let you know, or like let you into my head, what I'm thinking is, so this panel, and this is again, this is what the AI won't be able to do, just to to decide these type of things and think about the functionality of some design based on the context that it has. So let's say these panels here, that's why I created these bolts. They're kind of like hinges, right? What this thing is going to do is open up that way and that way. So it would be like that, right? So this thing opens like this, and thus revealing this hidden part, which is going to have some rails like that. And those rails are going to hold this whole visor thing, and that allows it to, you know, retract and go up. So they're kind of like some clamps or security system. So anyway, that doesn't really matter, but let's add a couple more things quickly, like some bolts, like this one. If you want to maintain the same size of the bolt, you can just set the size with the brush and hold control when you drag it. So if I click and drag and then hold control, it's going to be restricted to the size of my brush, so maybe something smaller. So click and drag, hold control, and that maintains the size of these sort of bolts. Right, let's do a couple more things here, maybe. Selection here. All right, I'm gonna leave the helmet there. It's not perfect or anything, but it should give you an idea of how fast and fun this process is. And let's do the body. I just look at the mid-journey beta, and you can tell it to put any object in a T-pose or any reference pose you need to capture a material. Huh? Ah, yeah, you can type anything, like anything you want. I actually tried, if you type create HDRI, yeah, I think it was something like HDRI panoramic or yeah, or globe or something. It can actually create not high dynamic range, but it could create the images that you can use as reflection maps wrapped around. But again, because it uses images from the internet, you can tell kind of like the source that it's using. So some of them were like the stock iStock photo or something like that. So that's what I'm saying. It's not, you know, it's not necessarily, I wouldn't rely on that for professional work other than reference at this point. Anyway, so let's get into the suit. Maybe it'd be a good idea at this point to do a quick save. By the way, I do have some invites for Midjourney. So I know you have to apply for like the, you know, to get an invite, and then you have to subscribe. But I do have some invites because I just have some. So what I'll do is I'm just gonna give them away in the Discord server. So if you're part of the Discord server, I'm just gonna do a couple of raffles there, and maybe one of them could be for one of the contests that we're gonna be running next month as well. Alrighty, so let's let me just show you what this is going to be like. So in case you're following along, I'll just show you. I'm gonna use Unsplash because, you know, these images are really cool. But you can use anything you want. So for sci-fi things, for this specific workflow, again, this works for anything at all. You can do really weird, crazy, organic stuff. But for this workflow where we're dealing with sci-fi, hard surface stuff, I will type abstract, and that will give me some abstract stuff. Maybe abstract geometry. Yeah, so things like this would be really good for the next step. So I'm gonna open that one up. I think I already have this one, but let's open it again. Basically, what you're looking for in this collection of photos or abstract stuff like this is a photo or an image or a texture, something that has enough contrast, like black and white, if you were to turn it into a grayscale image. And then I'll show you what we can do. Maybe this one as well. It doesn't have to be black and white. It could be color. Just make sure it has contrast, like this one right here. Let's just get a couple more. Maybe that one. Maybe some interesting patterns we can achieve with this one. And maybe that one as well. And this one. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and download all of this. So you don't have to use this website. You can just take photos of your own stuff. It's all about thinking about the abstraction of these images rather than, you know, anything in particular. All right. So I have them in my download folder. And what I'll do is I'm going to go to the textures. I'm going to click on import. And I'm going to import them all. I think they're all JPEGs. Yeah, should be okay. All right, so now we have all of those images that I just downloaded inside ZBrush. And the next thing is to focus on applying those textures as polypaint. And then we can extract the information as mask and do really cool stuff. So I'm going to take the base, duplicate that, put that base here in the originals. So, and maybe turn this off for the time being, right? So this is like the weird guy. And because we have a decent topology to subdivide, or at least everything, most of it is quads, I can just subdivide this a few times. Maybe 4 million polygons should be plenty for this process. All right, so now I'm going to switch to the skin shade 4, which allows me to see the polypaint or the color a little bit better. You don't have to, but you know, just for demo purposes is probably better. I'm going to select the standard brush. I'm going to clone that again. Again, I don't want to mess with my standard clone. Standard brush. So that's why I cloned it. And then I'm going to change a few things. I'm going to turn off the Z add. Again, all of that is under the draw palette for you. And I'm going to turn on RGB. Okay, so let's fill this guy with a white color, right? So now if I choose something like purple, I can go ahead and do this and literally just paint with polypaint without affecting the model, right? That's step 1. Step 2 would be to change the texture, the stroke to drag rect, right? So I can click and drag and do this based on the alpha, which at the moment I don't have any alpha selected and I want to keep it that way. And then we can use the texture, and let's just drop that here on the left hand side so that I can access that a lot easier. And I'm going to start with something like this one. And I have a symmetry enabled. So I'm going to click and drag, and this is basically the whole process. I'm just going to click and drag to add details, or not details, but some ideas for the suit. Obviously this is too random, right? We can obviously change that later, but I can just go ahead and start adding other images. So now I have a nice sort of orange line pattern going through it, and maybe this green one works well as a kind of like a shoulder pad, right? So that's cool. There's a lot of playing around with ideas. I kind of like taking advantage of that orange line and just creating some lines for the hands and feet and all of that. Then use something else for the, oh, this is a cool thing for the torso. Let's play around with something here. Just looking for interesting lines and patterns. Like the color doesn't really matter. It's cool. So some interesting lines in here. I'm not gonna bother with the back, but if you want to, you can totally do that. You can use the back face masking, and that allows you to, you know, play around with this, and it won't affect the front, right? If you wanna also have different patterns, let's say have that sort of line, which looks cool. That one as well, and sort of like trying to match that previous line. Yeah, that sort of thing. You can totally do that if you have backface masking. Let's try something else. This one with a bit more texture in it. Although I'm struggling to see the use for that one. Let's try this one. Yeah, that's not too bad. See that with that dark area, we can create some idea like a belt. But anyway, so you see, this is fun, and it's a bit abstract, and it's all about like coming up with patterns and figuring out what could work and what doesn't, right? But it's just clicking and dragging photos, right? And that sort of gives you a rough idea. It's kind of like a photo bashing for then use it in 3D. Like I said, the color doesn't really matter. What really matters is the values and the contrast between those colors. So obviously there's going to be quite a bit of contrast between this light and this mid gray area and this line in here, so that's good. So that's what I kind of like pay attention to when I'm collecting images for this workflow or when I'm applying them. So now we can, you know, we can ignore maybe something for the hands so that it doesn't look as boring, even though you won't see much. Yeah, some kind of like glove or something. Same thing for the boots, right? All right. Now this is cool and everything, and it's just paint. If I turn the poly paint off, nothing has happened. So the cool thing is that we can now, let's say step one, I'm gonna duplicate it so you can keep track of what I'm doing. So this one right here, I'm gonna go to masking palette. Let's hang on. Let's click on that masking, and I'm gonna go ahead and open up the mask by color, right? So the mask by color is gonna look at the at the poly paint, or like the intensity, depending what you choose, and is going to create a mask. So I'm gonna choose intensity, and Siri is going to look at the values again if it was a black and white image, and it's going to give me a mask based on that. So now I can hide the poly paint just by going to the subtool and turn this off. Select this white color, and you can see the mask that it created based on what we had, right? Now at this point you can do a couple of things. I'm not worried about the face, so I'll leave it as it is. I want to click on store morph target, and that way we can come back to this at any point with the morph, and then we have this, so we can invert it, right? Just invert the mask or not, it's up to you, whatever you think looks best. I'm gonna invert the mask, and I'm gonna go to the inflate palette in the deformation palette, and that should complete the effect. Let's also change to a more interesting material so you can see what's going to happen. Also, you can hide the mask by clicking on the view mask. So the mask is still there, but you can hide it. And then go to inflate, and voila, that's it. Maybe let's invert the mask so we have those lines going in. So invert, hide, inflate. Yeah, I think that's much better. Cool. That's it. We have now a cool looking thing. Let's go back in here. We still have the mask, right? So if I go ahead and do this, we still have the mask, so I can invert it and smooth things manually if I want to. I think this could be covered easily, so I'm not worried too much about that. But then we can use something like the morph brush, and the morph brush allows you to go back to what you had. Sorry, going back to what I have. Now, I don't mind this as it is. It's just a matter of polishing it, right? So the first thing I want to do is try and see if just polishing fixes some of those effects, which it does. Just a quick polish gives you this. And then also maybe clay polish as well, just to sharpen things up. That sort of removes some of the details. So let's go back. All right, but now you have something to start refining the whole design based on those random things. So what I mean by that is that you can take the, let's say, the clay buildup, or the clay brush, sorry, and go over this area and then start sculpting this, right? And smoothing that area, and then maybe the edge polish just to flatten those planes in here, right? And then of course these sort of lines are a little bit too intense. Maybe with the trim dynamic would be better. Right, but then you can also use the HR Geiger or the damp standard brush, or even the /3 would be good, and start refining this as well. So it's kind of like taking advantage of an semi-automated process, seamlessly random, and then being able to choose the design or apply your design skills to decide whether it is good or not, which is usually the hard part. So I'm just basically going over what these suggested that it could be, and then, you know, so the green bit, oh, by the way, this not only is, it produces the mask to do this really, really quick, but you can also turn on polypaint and it should match what you had. So if you're happy with the colors, you can already have a nice polypaint ready to go. So I wanna do this thing for the shoulder pad just to refine this. This could be like a strap attaching there. And these lines in here as well. And if you already have lots of resolution, you can switch to the smooth stronger, which also comes with ZBrush, and that allows you to smooth out an area a lot faster. Alrighty. So I think this looks pretty cool. This is kind of like a big buckle or something. Anyway, the rest is just a lot of polishing and a lot of sculpting, but you at least have kind of like a blueprint of what you can do, which I think is sometimes the hard part. Like when you're faced with something that is like a blank canvas, you're like, oh, I don't know what to do. But this one, you can at least get started with something and decide whether or not it works. So I might not be like entirely happy with how things are in here, but I can just go back and, you know, clean them up and, yeah, that sort of thing. I think this line here for the legs works really well. Anyway, I think you get the idea. Obviously, for the boots and stuff like that and the gloves, you can spend more time on that. But let's turn on the helmet back again. So that's not bad. We can do the same thing we did for the helmet with the insert brushes. So we can use something like straps. So this IMM curve. Let's do a quick save just in case. I can take the straps, hold shift. Oops. Hold shift. Hang on. Why is it not? Oh, sorry. Hold shift and then it should wrap around. Not really. Anyway, I'll do it like this, then sort of connect there. To rotate, you can click and then hold Control and rotate. So, you know, to add those sort of straps. I don't think it makes much sense to have it there actually. Let me undo that. But yeah, I just want to show you you have options. With these things, you know, maybe they're holding to some other straps in here, right? And then I go back to the suit, and then use the clay buildup or the clay brush just to add volume here. And keep in mind, this is still very, very sketchy, but as a concept, I think it works just fine. And again, if it gets approved, then you can spend the rest of the time polishing it. But if it doesn't, you don't waste that much time. Right? A couple more things we can do. I'm going to use a custom brush here from the brushes. Again, these brushes are what I have in the ZBrush store that I showed you before. So I'm going to use these cloth and drapery. Let's use something like this compression gravity fold. And then I'm just going to add some folds to the suit. Maybe with, I know which one to use. Maybe this compression override. So this is going to override some of the details a bit more. Maybe increase the intensity. Right, so I can just focus on the areas that I think would be more of a soft material. And even maybe some compression folds as well. All right. We get into the end of the stream. So just to wrap up this kind of like workflow and this technique, other things that you can do, if you keep the original, and this is the reason I kept the original, you can use that to, let's say, duplicate it again, right? And I'm gonna delete the higher and the lower, and I'm gonna use the inflate just to bring it closer to this. Turn off the poly paint, and I'm gonna use, in solo mode, I'm gonna use the mask lasso and start doing, say, a shoulder pad. Like that, like a mask. And then I can go to extract, click on extract, and that's good. Let's accept. And that creates, you know, something that we can use. Enable Dynamesh, polish that. And yeah, we can keep doing that for, you know, the other areas. Let's say a belt, right? We can do a large belt like that. Invert, extract, accept, polish, polish. Right, so we have more pieces out of that sort of like conform to that body. And you can, you know, apply the same techniques that I did for the helmet here. If you wanted to, you know, split this into multiple pieces, let's say use the slice curve to this for whatever reason. Actually, let's undo that. Let's do group visible. Console. group visible, and then cut there, cut there. We have both in both sides, and then group, dynamesh, redynamesh, and now we have kind of like split this. We can polish again, play polish, and now we have those nice sort of panels, and then use the move topological to play around with the panels again. I'm going to increase the resolution a bit. Polish and clay polish. Alrighty, so hopefully you see how powerful this technique is to build something, you know, rather interesting and detailed. Might not be the best, you know, I'm still like struggling to find or make sense of these areas right here, but you can easily use something like the clay brush to override certain things, right? And then just build volume, etc. So really fun thing to play around with. Another thing, just so you know, that you can do is with the masking brush or the masking lasso, select certain areas, invert them, and then use the inflate to just move them a little bit more, and then smooth that whole thing. Clay polished will be applicable, or will be applied to just that area, so that way you can add and manipulate a little bit of that silhouette if you don't want to add extra pieces. All right, and to wrap it up, just with the 5 minutes that we have left, I'm going to enable the poly paint, and I'm just going to click on adjust colors, just to show you that you can do that from here, and we can play around with, you know, the hues. So I'm just going to muck around with these sliders, see if we get something interesting, something like that. And I'm going to give you one more tip that I think is something really, really cool that is mostly hidden. As in, it's not very easy to find in ZBrush, but if you go to the standard brush, let's make it a painting brush, right? So we can paint with it. I'm going to select something like a yellow color, right? If I go ahead and start painting, even if I press softly, I'm still going to override these colors, right? But in ZBrush, you have the ability to turn any brush into polypaint and any polypaint into different modes of polypainting. So I can use this yellow color to be, I can set up to be a multiply. So if I go to the brush palette and open up the alpha texture, if I set this to 3, so sorry, in the alpha texture palette, you have this polypaint mode. If I click on 3, it's going to be multiplied. So I'm multiplying whatever values, or it's like they multiplied in kind of like in Photoshop. So I can just paint with yellow, but keeping all those values. So that's really fun. So I'm going to do this relatively quickly using some of the hues that I already have in here. Again, just multiplying colors. And that sort of gets rid of that red color that I didn't like for this design. You have other modes, so if you hover over it, it tells you you have the standard with 1, colorize with 2, multiply 3, lighten 4, and darken 5. So I can go lighten and just light up some areas like so. All right, and then I can take these other pieces and just fill them with a similar color, just to complete the whole effect. Alrighty. For the helmet, let me just think what would be the simplest way to colorize the helmet. I think I'm just going to go for a green color, fill object, and then the helmet be slightly lighter, fill object, and then I'm gonna compute, and that compute is in this Z plugin palette AO. So Z plugin palette, that's ambient occlusion. Sorry, this one right here. So I just computed the ambient occlusion, invert the mask, and hide the mask, and use one of the other colors in here to just add a bit of kind of like dirt or dust in there, and then select these pieces. Yeah, I'm gonna select these pieces. I'm gonna split them up. The face looks stupid, but I'm gonna split hidden. Delete, no, split hidden. Oh, I need to get rid of the subdivision. Doesn't matter. Split hidden. So now this is a separate tool. I'm gonna give it a darker color. And yeah, you can do the same thing with other pieces. So let's say this one. All of these pieces would be something else. So I'm gonna split hidden again. And then use maybe this green color as a feature piece there. And oh no. Oh, sorry, I thought I got rid of some pieces. All right, so I'm just gonna leave it there. And I'm gonna select the body again, adjust color. Just gonna make sure this is like, you know, I messed the color up too much. So I'm just gonna give it a tint. And it's gonna be harder to see once I do the render, but because I messed up with the colors too much. It should be okay. All right, so that's pretty much it. And then just to wrap it up, we can go quickly into Keyshot. Let's switch this. Sorry, I'm just moving into desktop mode, so the tablet is not there. Just to wrap it up, because yeah, it is the end of our time today. So I'll go into Keyshot, and this is what I had before, right? Like this is the one that I used as an example before. It has some like more purposefully placed lines, like, you know, it has a bit more of a flow. That's what I spend time doing, like this sort of padding here at the top. But again, it is very similar. So we can just go ahead and click on Keyshot, send that to Keyshot, and it would use the same setup that I have already. It's just gonna update with that, and we can just apply some kind of material to this. Let's go for plastic. I just go for something simple. And if I hold the Alt key, it's going to preserve the color. Right, and then, you know, oops. If I press the Alt key, or I hold the Alt key when I'm dragging into the meshes, it's going to preserve that that poly paint that we did. So now, I mean, it's not bad. I can double click that material and play around with things like the roughness. So it's less metallic, let's say, or less, not metallic, but reflective. Same thing with the with that piece. And then the other pieces, I think they're fine. Maybe just to add a bit of contrast, we can select this here at the top and add a bit of roughness just to variate that a bit, make it more interesting. Oh no, that's not the one. Hang on. There we go. So that sort of breaks that light as well. And then we have a concept, and we can just, you know, play around with the lighting. Maybe change things a bit. So this is the concept that we did today. As you can see, you know, as a quick concept, if you are planning to do some kind of like sci-fi character, as a concept, this works really well. And of course, there's lots of things that should or need to be fixed if this was more for a production, or, you know, as a final asset. If I were to just take this, let's say the general look and feel of it gets approved, I would just definitely go back and make sure that everything is refined to a point that I can use that and pose the character and then just share as a final image. But I think this is a fairly decent concept for the time that we spent playing around with it, and hopefully the tools and the workflows that I share with you guys today are of help. So yep, I'm gonna leave it here, and I will see you in a couple weeks. Let me know if there's any last minute question that you want me to answer. I'll be happy to. I haven't checked the chat. All right, cool. Yeah, awesome. No worries. Yeah, so I'm gonna leave it here. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. So yeah, July the 12th my time, the 11th for most of you that are on the on America. So yeah, I'll leave it here. And do I have a Twitch channel? I did one. I had one ages ago. I haven't used it. I do have a YouTube channel, so that's better because I have all the tutorials and everything that I share in there. And I do have a Discord channel that is pretty active, and some of my students from the Extra Mile and other courses are in there as well. So it's like a super helpful community. Everyone helps each other with, you know, questions and everything. So if you're interested in that, let me share with you guys the link, because we're gonna be doing some really cool stuff pretty soon in the Discord. Here we go, Discord. So this link that I'm gonna send is like the invite. So you just click on that, go in there. So yeah, that's the Discord one, and this is my YouTube channel, and you can subscribe. And yeah, just keep an eye on the new tools and new not tools, new videos that I'm gonna share later on down the track. So hopefully that helps. Is Keyshot must have for portfolio, or PBR ZBrush is fine? Yeah, what's a must have for a portfolio is nothing to do with the tool. Like, forget about the tool. If you can do a nicely presented and good image with just PBR, which is totally doable, by all means, like you don't have to rely on tools, specific tools to create your portfolio. I'll share something with you right now that hopefully put things in perspective. So this guy right here, the Leucotom Cavalier, this is a creature that I did as a demo for a guide that is like the compositing guide, which is free as well. You can get that from the 3D concept artist actually. So let me just show you that. So here is the 3D concept artist. So this is the subscribe thing that I mentioned before. If you wanna, well, this is the website. You can go to the newsletter, and that's where you get all the tips and tricks. But if you go to the resources in the 3D concept artist, there are a bunch of workshops and stuff that you can do. All of these ones are free. It's just that they're structured to be on a, you know, they have like a time limit, so you can just start it in here, and then you get emails with each part depending on what you want to create. But if you go to this advanced, the cheat sheet for compositing, you open that one up, you'll see that is this guy, and it basically takes you through the process or the steps that I take to produce something like this, the one that you can see here, as a, you know, as a ZBrush BPR render pass and how to composite that. So yeah, you can just grab it, and I'll basically follow everything just with ZBrush and Photoshop to create this type of render. So you can achieve something very, very similar with your own sculpture. So you don't have to have Keyshot or anything super special. Obviously, it saves times and it helps to do more realistic stuff, but it's how you use the tool, not the tool at all. So don't ever rely or think that a tool is gonna make you better or worse. If you don't have access, you still can make things, basic things, work in an amazing way. So yeah, there are other tools and other guides in here as well if you wanna grab them. So these two are kind of like extensions to this workshop. So it's a 5-day workshop, free to join, where it's a challenge to make this character, but then you can apply the same workflow and the same principle for creating Grogu from the Mandalorian, or like a version of it, and this other weird looking frog thing, again with the same idea. Anyway, I'll leave it for you guys to explore. Hopefully, again, this has been of help. I'm gonna leave it here, go back to ZBrush, and this is what we ended up with in today's session, which I think is fairly decent. Here we go. All right, so again, I'll leave it here, guys, and I'll see you in the next week, or in a couple of weeks, and or in the Discord if you guys join.